Hello, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com, and it is that time again because it's Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Italy time where I am. Did I mention yet? It's October 27, 2020. Oh, can this year end already? How do you feel about that? Today, of course, it's office hours Ask Me Anything. I stay for about an hour and I take everybody's questions. You've got 4 ways to ask me questions on the office hours events. You can put them in the LinkedIn chat. You can put them in the YouTube chat. You can use the link at the bottom of my screen, which is good 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's an anonymous question asking thing. It comes into my email. I have no idea who you are. deltacx.link/AMA. And we already have one question ready to go today, and it's a long one, so I'm excited to take a look at that. And what else can I tell you? Oh, the 4th way is to tweet with hashtag DeltaCX, and my system should catch that. I'm looking at my system now. In fact, I've got to turn on a few more things. So while I turn on a few more things to get my system cooking, everybody tell me how you are and where you are, and as usual, what are your pronouns? I want to get this right. Let's see. And don't forget to start asking your questions, because even though we already have a big one queued up, I'm going to need questions to answer after that. So send them in. We'll get them in the queue. Okay, I think we've got the YouTube hooked up. Always takes me a little extra time. Avraham is here, and he's got a question. Let's see. Now, his question is kind of shorter and easier. So I'm going to start with his first, and then I'm going to go to the one that was already sent in. I hope the person who sent in the longer one won't mind. I'll do this shorter one first. So, and Jesse says, is there a link to the Acture class? Yes, let me also put that up on the screen. And Niku is here. Hello, Niku. So Niku, you will be 3rd in line for the questions today. We've got 2 before you, and I hope you're having a good day too. So let me get these questions ready to go. I always paste them into a little note file so I can put them in the YouTube description later. And the link to the Acture class is deltacx.link/DEC2020. It's over here. What can I say? It's all superimposed. I don't know. DEC for December, since that's when it is. 2020, since that's when it is. And it is $60, 60, for a live 2-day workshop, as well as my video courses. So let's get to some questions. Avraham started out with, when is it appropriate to make a mid-level fidelity prototype? So for those of you who aren't that sure, a low fidelity wireframe or prototype usually looks really sketched, almost hand-drawn or hand-drawn. Even if it's made by software, it can look sketchy and hand-drawn. Medium fidelity, or some people say mid-level fidelity, is where we've now started to make it look more professional. We've got boxes and arrows, as they say, but maybe not arrows. We've got our boxes, we've got buttons, we've got things. It's not sketched anymore. It looks a little more refined, but it doesn't have the final visual design. The high fidelity or full fidelity wireframe or prototype is where we put on the full visual design, which is especially a good way to go if you have a design system, a component library, a style guide, a UI kit, if that's kind of already been decided. So when would we do the medium fidelity? Now, I work almost exclusively in medium fidelity, partially because I'm not a great artist, but of course, if someone has a component library or design system, I'll put that in. And partially because I don't have a process where I want to hold a pen or pencil and sketch first. Some people do, and so I welcome that, but it's not a process that works for me. So here's the way that Larry Marine put it to me recently, and some people know Larry Marine. You can follow him on LinkedIn. He's been working in UX, let's just say many decades, and studied under Don Norman, so I tend to trust Larry Marine. And his thought was, if you start with low fidelity and you sketch some ideas, then you can do some quick testing with appropriate target audience members to see just generally, is your concept going in the right direction? He says, once you learn from that, you can fix your concept, and then you can shift to medium fidelity. And now you're going to wireframe or prototype what we call the happy path, which means what if the customer got everything right and they never saw an error message and they never forgot their password? So kind of the path of least resistance. So we wireframe or prototype that in medium fidelity without the final artwork, and then you can do some testing on that. That's kind of like half concept testing, half usability testing. So is this easy to use? Does this make sense? Does this accomplish tasks? Is it efficient and streamlined? And is this the right concept to solve the problem, or does it look like we missed something? And then if that's going well, and even if it's not, if you learn from that, then you can iterate on that, possibly test that again. And again, at each level of fidelity, you don't have to only do one test. It really depends on how your testing goes. If the testing seems to mostly support the idea with some fixes, keep going. If it seems like the testing is saying this isn't the right way to go, don't rush to the next step. We have to fix where we are now. So there might be multiple rounds of testing in each level of fidelity. And then finally, you might do the more high or full fidelity, and you might also wireframe and prototype other paths and error messages and maybe different there's lots of different things that could be done at that point. And so so there's Larry's way, which is medium fidelity is a step along the way. And then there's me, which is I tend to mostly work in medium fidelity. But Larry said to me that if you at least start with a sketched version that seems far from finalized and you try to test that as just a concept, you're more likely to get different types of feedback, because when people see a nice, crisp, medium fidelity or high fidelity wireframe or prototype, they start to feel like, this has already been decided. So that the low fidelity has a role in making sure people understand this is an early concept. I hope that helps. Please ask any follow-up questions. And before we get to Niku's question, I'm going to ask the question that came in anonymously a little earlier today. And then I see that there's another question coming in now that I will answer, but I feel badly putting off the person who emailed before. So someone emailed, and all it said was, thoughts on this Canvas model to help focus stakeholders. And they sent me a link. Now, I can't read you out the link. That's ridiculous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to tell me if you can see my screen. So, and I mean all of it. Here's my Slack messages. So I hope everybody is seeing my screen right now. Let's get the questions in on the side. Should be little me in the corner and a screen. Let's see. Yep, there I am. Okay. So the link they sent me was to what appears to be a Medium or Medium style article from someone talking about the lean canvas. And by the way, if you don't know, the lean canvas is just a derivative of the business model canvas. You can see that right here. They admit it. It's basically a derivative of this. And the lean UX canvas, which I have zero love for, is a further derivative of that. But I think I burned that one to the ground in the Lean UX is Neither Lean Nor UX podcast. So look that one up. So I think this person's question is thoughts on this. Let's go back to those questions. Thoughts on this Canvas model to help focus stakeholders. In general, I'm not a fan of Canvas and framework types of things. I tend to worry that they're a bit in the box, and I tend to I'm a play to your audience type of person. I think that's from being a musician, but I know that I can't tell you how to play to your stakeholders without knowing these stakeholders. What tends to sway them? What are they interested in hearing? Do they want to hear all of these things? Do they want to hear some of these things? So I'm not a Canvas and framework person. I tend to be more of a customize this to who I'm dealing with person. And that way it's as short or as long, as detailed or as high level as the people I'm presenting it to. And sometimes I have different presentations for different people so that I can make sure I really have their attention and I'm catering to what they want to know. So as for should you use the lean canvas or some flavor of it to present to stakeholders, I guess I would have to say why. So let's take a look at what's in it. So the lean canvas has list problems. And again, we always hope that these are the customer's problems, but of course, that makes me want to ask right away, how do we know that these are the problems? Are these the problems the stakeholders said? Or did we do good qualitative research and we know that these are the problems? And maybe they're different than what the stakeholders said. So if we're just going to repeat stakeholder stuff back to them and not have done our research, then, go ahead, use anything you want. Use a piece of gum and a stick and some hand cream and mix it all together and go, congratulations, stakeholder. We wrote your problem in a box. Here's a canvas. So I don't feel like we're doing our job unless we do real research and find out the real problems. How are these problems solved today? That's not so bad. Again, if we've done good qualitative research, then we're going to know what our customers are tending to do now and what workarounds they've created and what opportunities that might present. Next, you see solution. Well, that escalated quickly. Wow, we already have a solution. So to me, this is a little bit flawed because it doesn't seem to follow a UX process. It doesn't seem to follow user-centered design or human-centered design. And usually when we're sharing something like this with a stakeholder, and I'm certainly not always, we're showing it at the beginning of a project to get them involved or to get buy-in. And I wouldn't want to give people solutions yet. I would want to get them really understanding the problem, the customers, and the qualitative research that we've done. So I think it's a little early to throw out solutions or solution ideas. I do not believe in throwing out solution ideas too early. I will sometimes give people a couple of early concepts, but I will always say, this is not anywhere near anything until more research and testing and iterations are done. There's some words missing here. List the key metrics that tell you how we'll never know. Key metrics are important, and usually the business has metrics and goals, marketing has metrics and goals, and we should be creating some of ours as well. So those could be represented here. But again, we don't have to know the solution to know the metrics. We could say key metrics. We'll know this problem is solved when we see 10% fewer complaints to customer support. We'll know this problem is solved when we see 5% more free trials in the next quarter. We don't even have to know what the solution is. So I tend to be a non-fan of any of these canvases or frameworks that seem to rush into solutions. Unique value proposition. Single, clear, compelling message that states why you're different and worth paying attention, spelled incorrectly. So again, this came from the business model canvas. This came from the idea that a startup is deciding, what am I going to build and how's it going to be unique and different? And in reality, I don't know how something's going to be unique and different until I've done great research and I've started poking around with solutions. Otherwise, these are all just fantasies. And I'm always worried about teams and stakeholders getting caught up way too early in fantasies. Sometimes they go, well, remember that early idea you had? Why aren't we doing that? And I'm like, because that ended up sucking. David is saying, it's important to remember a lean canvas is intended to capture a hypothesis that must be validated through research and testing. David, I hope you're right. I can only say I've seen these things used a variety of different ways, and it is not always in the dream way that we might prefer. I sometimes see variations of these coming out of boot camps and other things. So I would say to David and to others, it would be great if something like this were used to capture a hypothesis that is then validated through research and testing. But again, how do we know that we have the right problem if we haven't done the research? Why are we throwing solution ideas out there too early? High-level concepts. I feel like this is too early. I have to say that in the work that I do, I almost never come up with a hypothesis because I'm worried that if I come up with a hypothesis, something will happen to bias me. I will hope it's right. I will ask questions specifically around it. I'm not a need to be right person, but if I were, Maybe I fudged things a little bit so that it looks like I was right all along. I've worked with dozens of those people. Magically, none of their ideas were bad. Everything always proved out. Amazing. I need something for that. Amazing. So again, I'm always concerned about some of this cart before horse, tail wagging dog, where by throwing some of these things out too early, we're going to throw garbage out there and we're going to find ways to support that garbage. So again, I know that these things have places in the universe, and thank you to David for the comment. But the original question was, what are my thoughts on this? Let's see the original question. What are my thoughts on this to help focus stakeholders? So, of course, my question is, what were stakeholders focused on, and what am I trying to get them focused on? Because this is a business model canvas. And hypothetically, there's nothing lean about this because the definition of lean is looking at root causes and analyzing processes and products to make them be fewer defects and higher quality. So if you care about fewer defects and higher quality, I wouldn't jump into some of these things so fast. And then further in this article, this person says that they've tried to reorder this. They think things should go in a different order, that maybe first we should think about who our customers are, then we should think about what the problem is, then we should think what our value proposition is. Ultimately, again, if the question is, should we use a canvas like this to talk to stakeholders? My thought is there's some things here that are of value. I think we do need to talk to stakeholders about metrics and some of their expectations and goals. We need to make sure we're on the same page about who the customers are. And we got to make sure we are understanding our problems correctly. But if this is a CX or UX project, and if this is about stakeholder communication, I'd probably stop there because, again, I would be worried that by trying to give them early hypotheses, solutions, value propositions, high-level concepts, unfair advantages, I mean, all of these are flavors of solutions. Box number 4, solution. Box number 3, unique value proposition. What are we going to do that's going to that's going to be unique? What's our high level concept? Well, that sounds a little bit solution-y. What's our unfair advantage? Something that can't easily be copied or bought? That's a little solution-y. How are we going to deliver this through different channels? That's super solution-y. Cost structure, revenue streams. So I would have to say, while there's a place for something like this, and it's really just a pretty out of order box version of typically when people are writing a business plan. So if you're writing a business plan, this can be a short version of that. But if we're not writing a business plan, and if we're planning a CX or UX project, I would have to say, for me, and you're welcome to disagree, I think there's a few things here we definitely want to talk to stakeholders about, but to me, the rest of it seems irrelevant, out of place, or putting the cart before the horse. I would like to express to the stakeholder that first I want to do a lot of research, and then I can come back to you with possible ideas, possible opportunities, things like that. One step at a time. So let's see. Did it flip back to me? It's back to me. Hi, everybody. So I hope that helps. Anonymous person, super question. Love talking about these things because I say all the time that I'm not a fan of some of these frameworks and canvases, and so I welcome the opportunity to talk about where I think they work or don't work. As someone who's had startups, I've certainly done business plans, and so sometimes I've filled these in, but they're not my usual tool for CX and UX projects. Okay, so we've got Niku's question. Let's put it up on the screen. Niku, friend of the show, says, "Hi, Debbie. Hope you're having a good day." Honestly, not that great, but thank you for asking. Working on a public health messaging project now. What do you think about how UX has adapted to or innovated in the context of COVID-19? I guess my first question, Niku, would be, what have we done? What have we adapted or innovated? I'm not sure I've seen a lot of innovations or maybe any. And I know a lot of our adaptation has come from maybe remote work and some of those changes. So Niku, I would throw this one back on you. What are those innovations that you are seeing in UX related to COVID? Because maybe I'm just having a bad day, but I'm not seeing them. Yes, it's decaf. So Niku, let's come back to you. And let's see, we've got another question from Andreas. Thanks for joining, Andreas, in the LinkedIn chat. And then we'll get to the ones coming in the email. Andreas says, what is, from your point of view, the one major change the COVID-19 situation brought to us in CX, an acceleration or imbalance? So that's like a cousin of Niku's question. Are you two hanging out? Andreas, do you know Niku? Niku, Andreas? Again, I am not too sure. I can tell you what I think should have changed, but I can tell you I'm not sure it has. So I think that what should have happened and should be happening now in CX and UX for COVID-19 is a lot more qualitative research. I think people sent out a lot of surveys trying to figure out how people were changing or feeling during this year. But surveys are what surveys are. See episode 51, surveys can be junk. And, who answers them? Are they answering honestly and so on? I ended up seeing ridiculous people posting things like, after COVID, everyone's going to move out of the city and move to the country because they're tired of being locked down in their small apartments. And I asked a bunch of my city friends and they were like, we love our city. We don't want to move. And I was like, okay. And these things were like 40% of people who answered our survey said they've recently looked at real estate listings. And I'm like, looking at real estate listings can be fun. Like it doesn't necessarily mean everybody's moving. So I saw a lot of garbage surveys coming up, but I didn't see a lot of great qualitative research coming up, which could, I know people are afraid to do that live, but it could be done remotely. So I think I've been telling companies, there's even a page about it on the deltacx.com website. We really need to do a lot more qualitative research right now to understand how people have changed. Has the audience changed? You have a different audience now. What do they need from you? What do they expect? What's changing for them with COVID, with homeschooling, with losing a job, with being sick, with knowing someone who was sick, with dealing with loved ones who may have passed? Who's asking those questions? I can tell you that a very famous company asked me for a proposal to do such research. I gave them a proposal with a very modest price, and they said the proposal sounded amazing and it was exactly what they wanted, but what could I do for a quarter of the price? And I was like, well, I can walk away. So it was ridiculous that this company thought they had a need to cater better to their customers in the pandemic and connect better with people and provide what they need, and then didn't want to pay for research to find out what that was. Giant middle finger to customers. So that's what should have happened, but didn't. Niku is back with an update. Andreas, I hope that helps a little bit. Niku says, I hope your day improves. Too late, but thank you. Maybe tomorrow. I think something that may have changed is how people are fatigued by overload of information, and maybe new products need to be more bite-sized or not mentally overloading. And she said, also, I think work from home introduces a new variable. Yeah, so change of environment is pretty much what I was just talking about, that how have our customers changed because they're home, because they might be homeschooling, because they might be taking care of someone who's sick, because they got sick. There's so many variables right now, more than we could have dreamed of, and I feel like companies are not stopping to check what's going on with their customers. They're just plowing right through all of their plans and saying, we said we were going to build this, let's build this, or we said we were going to build this, we're afraid of the economy, put it on hold. And they're not really looking at what people need and how they've changed. And that's not everybody, that's not 100%, but it seems to be what many companies are doing. And we know this because nobody knew how to say anything this year. Every company was like, in these unprecedented times, and we're in this together. I don't know. I don't feel like we're in this together. When I can't get anybody to wear a mask, when people aren't staying away from each other, when people are breaking rules and making each other sick and saying it's a hoax, I don't feel like we're all in this together. So, and you're totally right. There needed to be a lot more attention paid to the work from home experience. For some of us, like me, I love that. I live on it. It's great. Nothing for me to adapt to. For other people, it was disastrous. And then a whole spectrum in between. And I think more people should have stopped, and some of this should have been studied, and some of this should have just been taken into consideration. Like I saw a couple of things go by LinkedIn earlier in the year that was like, see, remote work is a disaster because all these people are home and they can't get their work done because they have to deal with their kids and illness. And I was like, well, that's not an indictment of remote work. That's an indictment of pandemic where your kids are home and now you have to be their teacher. I don't think we can blame, that's not remote work's fault. If the kids were in school all day and people were remote working, probably be different. Decaf with coconut milk. I highly suggest it. Let's get back to some of the anonymous questions that have been coming in through the email. I have one, and it looks like a follow-up to the earlier one. So let's do it. Let's add this to my little notepad you saw that I have going. And I'll read it out loud and we will answer it. And then please keep sending your questions. I'm watching. Okay, so this question says, what would you call a high fidelity mock-up or sketch that showcases flow and visual attributes so that the developers can inspect and get a feel for what they're creating? I find it troublesome to call it a prototype since it's not really testing anything. It's just based on assumptions and no users have ever tried interacting with it. Okay, there's a lot of pieces to this question. I'll try to break it down the way I'm hearing the question, and I apologize if I'm hearing it wrong. So on the one hand, we have a high fidelity mock-up showing the flow. So I assume you've got multiple screens or steps, as well as the visual design. And developers want to see this to get a feel for what they're creating. Maybe this is for the full engineering team, or maybe this is front end. I'm not sure. And this person says, I find it troublesome to call it a prototype since it's not really testing anything. So I don't believe a prototype has to be used only for testing. When I teach about what prototyping can be used for, I think I have a list of 7 things, but I don't have them open right now. So let's see, off the top of my head, brainstorming, collaboration, socializing ideas, pitching to investors, for all you startups out there, testing for sure, delivery to developers. How many was that? Anyway, that's pretty close. So I would say, to me, something is a prototype. My definition, and again, other people will disagree, my definition of a prototype is when you have built an interactive model, whether you did that with rapid prototyping software like Axure, or whether you wrote some code. It is an interactive model where people can interact realistically with it to represent how this might work, whether or not it's how it might look. Because again, sometimes I'm working in medium fidelity and it doesn't have all of the visual attributes. So at the very least, it's got to function semi-realistically or mostly realistically for me to say it's a prototype. So for example, I have a hard time calling InVision prototypes because to me they're just click through screens. They're stop motion animation. So to me that's not a prototype. But if something is interactive and can be explored, can be reviewed, can be tested, can be shared with engineering, if it helps engineering see the model that they're going to build, I would still call it a prototype. That's my personal approach to naming something. But then we have the last part of the question, and let's read that again. It's just based on assumptions and no user has ever interacted with it. So in that case, it is still a prototype, but it is a prototype that is based on guesses. And so I think it still could be called a prototype, but it needs a lot of asterisks around it and sadness, because this prototype is really a guess as to whether or not this is the right idea and the right execution of the idea for the customers. So I've been suggesting for some time that whatever this is, the documentation needs to come with a prediction of risk. You need to write out that because we never researched with users, or we never tested with users, we don't know if this is the right thing to build. This is our best guess, and our company shouldn't be making guesses, and guesses are risky. And here's the 8 reasons why guesses are risky. So technically, I would say this is still a prototype, but I would say it's a prototype with a potentially bad future because there's just too likely a chance that it's flawed. What are the chances that it's perfect versus the chances that it's flawed? There's always going to be flaws. So I guess we would still call it a prototype. So Frederick says, look up the research article, What Does Prototypes Prototype by Hood and Hill. What does prototypes prototype? Let's take a look. Let's see if we can find this. What do prototypes prototype? From 1997. Check you out. Old school Frederick to the rescue. Frederick G. So Frederick G says, everybody look at this. I found it on ScienceDirect.com. Handbook of Human-Computer Interaction from 1997. So amazing. Back then we didn't have Acture and stuff, so it would be interesting to see what these people suggest. But if that helps somebody, you can take a look at it. But, this looks like it's going to be another debate about, what is the meaning of a word. And, if you don't want to call it a prototype because it was never, to me, it wasn't user-centered design. It wasn't human-centered design because no people were involved. Therefore, it's not UX. So I would say maybe call it a prototype, but don't call it a UX prototype or something like that. I don't know. It sounds like you're trying to send a message to your team that they're getting things wrong. And I think you might have to find another way to do that, because I think getting wiggly with the definition of prototype is probably not going to send the message to the team that you're trying to send. That would be my thoughts and advice based on what I think the question asker is trying to ask. Thanks, Frederick. I think I just found it. This is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. I am here for you. I'll be here another half hour taking questions live and drinking my coffee. And we're out of questions right now. So if anybody has questions, please do ask them. I think I am caught up. You are also welcome to ask follow-up questions to your own question or even to other people's questions. There are no rules here other than don't be a jerk. You can also ask questions through the anonymous link if you don't want me to read your name out loud, because you can tell I like to call people by name, and then you're like, don't say that. I'm complaining about my job. So deltacx.link/AMA. And just a quick reminder to people that Delta CX is an actual company. It is my agency, and we do all kinds of CX and UX projects and consulting for companies. So if you ever feel like, wow, I wish we could have Deb on this project, she seems fun, you can. So please get in touch and let me know if there's anything I can bid on or propose. Oh, still warm. Thank you, large American cup. What a day. How was your day, everybody? Any other questions? Otherwise, we're hanging out here, or we'll turn it into karaoke now that I've put my recording studio mic at my desk, and we'll pick a song to sing, and YouTube will copy strike it and put an ad on it and give people money. That's how that works, by the way. If you ever go to one of my videos and it's got an ad on it, it's not because I wanted the ad there. There must be some... I must have sang something and they got copy stricken, copy struck. I don't know. And YouTube had to pull some money to give to the artist. So that is why I'm not doing I'm doing a little karaoke on YouTube, but not too much. Oh, I'm so sleepy too. I got hours of work after this. Does anybody else find 2020 exhausting? Can we research that a little more, please? And Frederick, thanks. I see you in my Slack chat. I think it's the same thing I just brought up. That's like a old school PDF, which reminds me, somewhere in a box I have a book that says Apple's Human-Computer Interaction Guidelines from 1997. Old school. No other questions have come in. We can certainly just hang out together. Oh. If you know me, you know I start yawning at 3 p.m. And unfortunately, it's 7 p.m. Oh, David Logan. Hello, David Logan. David Logan says, and one from Chris also. Thank you. I will get both these questions on the list and answer them in order. And again, questions are optional. We can always just hang out together. Oh, and Julianne also, you will be question number 3. See, I start yawning and everyone's like, no, wait, I have a question. Or whenever I go, okay, time for us to wind down and say goodbye, and then like 12 questions. So come on, everybody, get in your questions while it's still the middle of the show. So David Logan in LinkedIn says, what would you say are the main differences between UX and CX? I think for the most part, we should use the term CX instead of UX because UX is misunderstood and has a definite branding problem. Originally, when Don Norman coined the term UX in the early 1990s, he meant it to mean everything we now use CX to mean. So he meant it to mean thinking about a product, researching the product, going to the store and looking at the product, buying it, putting it in your car, driving it home, or going online. That's what he meant by UX. And over the years, that changed. And for some reason now, people think UX is making screens. Is it a screen? It's UX. But then everything else they think is CX, the voice of the customer, researching customers, caring about customers. Service design sometimes gets lumped into CX, even though many people in UX say they do service design. So there's just such a huge misunderstanding of UX right now. And I do think that one of the ways to solve it is to kind of slowly shift away from that term, because I have to ask myself, which is easier, re-explaining and redefining UX to everyone who's getting it wrong, but is sure they have it right, or switching to a term that they already tend to know and at least respect when they hear it. I find there's a lot of respect and plenty of budget for the CX department and plenty of hostility and no money for the UX team. So to me, they are, as terms, they are interchangeable because many of us in UX believe that we are researching and architecting the entire customer experience, and we'd like to be involved in all of those touch points. But people think UX are artsy-fartsy hipsters drawing screens, and please stay in that box. So, not a fan. Hello, Chris, new friend of the show. What CX or UX skill do you think is the most underrated? Part of me wants to say deductive reasoning. Part of me wants to say problem solving. But the problem is, then we end up with some Dunning-Kruger in here because there are many people who are absolutely atrocious at problem solving and super terrible or have no deductive reasoning or people, I mean, we all know people who think they're solving problems and they're so bad at it. So I think because it's one of those things that everyone thinks they're good at, like lots of people think they're great singers when they're terrible singers, it gets underrated. And people are like, problem solving. Yeah, I do that. We're all problem solvers. And it's not necessarily that they're not, but are they problem finders? Let's evolve this as I'm going. Problem finding, I would say maybe that's the least underrated skill because it takes all these other skills to do it. I think lots of people think they're problem solvers, but they're probably, as Larry Marine will say, solving the wrong problem very well. We have to be problem finders. You know, when the stakeholder says, hey, you know, like I had a stakeholder come to me once in a project and say, you know, we found a statistic that 27% of mobile web users aren't filtering their search results. So we got the budget and we're spinning up a project and we're going to design this thing that we're going to steal from eBay and it's going to force people to filter their search results. And I was like, well, hold on here. I'm not sure this is even a problem. Just because 27% of people do something, or even if 80% of people did something, that doesn't mean it's a problem or that something's going wrong. I said, can you tie that 27% back to complaints, customers leaving, buying less or buying less often or spending less? Like, can you tie that number to something that's actually going wrong? And they were like, no. And I said, well, have we considered that maybe people aren't filtering their search results because they're using the search terms that would be their filters? Like if you search for size 8, guess, blue, jeans, skinny, etc. What do I need to filter by? I gave you my size, I gave you the color, I gave you what it is, I gave you the style. My search, if the search is any good, my search results should be pretty dead on. Shouldn't need to filter. So I do see a lot of garbage, and to me, that comes down to problem finding. So I would probably say the most underrated skill is problem finding, which takes a little bit of balls to stand up to someone and go, that's. Let's just check that that's the real problem. I don't think it is, because I think many people would like to just say, right, I'll work on that. I think problem finding. What do you think of that? Let's see. And Siat says, I want to bring this discussion over here. We were talking about it on the Slack channel. I heard this week that people call themselves problem solvers when in reality we should be looking for the right problem to solve. Yep. So Chris, I hope that is an interesting answer. You're welcome to ask a follow-up question. I've got 20 more minutes. Keep it coming. And checking for emails. No new emails. So nobody has sent any anonymous questions, but we do have a question in the LinkedIn from Julianne, and that is answered with this graphic. Julianne says, what is your Slack channel? I've been following your videos on and off, but was curious to find out more. Sure. So we've got a Slack channel, and you can sign into it and join it. There's no fee. There's no membership. There's no charge. You can get it. The short link is deltacx.link/join Slack. All one word, lowercase. That will dump you straight into Slack. There's over 300 people there. It's a little bit quiet, but you always know that you have access to your peers. You've got access to me, and I hope over time it'll be a little bit more of an active community. But it still has some growing pains. But so far, lots of lovely people there with some good questions. So feel free to join. Again, absolutely no charge. And again, please usability test the subscribe button and ring the bell on YouTube so you know when I'm live or posting videos. And, won't you please empathize with the like button if you're on YouTube right now? This helps me out so much if you can hit that like button and tell YouTube that this is a good show and you recommend it for other people and things like that. That really, really helps. So thank you. Julianne says, in addition to your services and podcasts, are there any resources you recommend for junior designers who want to learn problem solving and finding the right way? Oh, Julianne, that is like the best question. I wish I knew. That's something I'm still trying to figure out because part of me, and some of you are going to go, oh, Debbie, we hate her. Part of me feels like this is something that might be more of a talent. Sometimes, and some of you disagree with me. I know, I get it. It's fine. I sometimes feel like there's things you're born with that are talents or gifts, and then there are things you can get better at over time. And then sometimes I feel like there are things that you can't get better at over time, or would be really, really hard to. Like, hands up, who knows a completely tone-deaf singer with no rhythm? And no matter how much that person tries to take lessons, they may or may not ever be good at singing. So how do you make someone better at problem solving, problem finding, deductive reasoning? I really don't know. I don't know. I remember I was working a few years ago studying, just for my own fun, how do we make people more empathetic? And I ended up studying it so much that I've decided I don't think we can. They would have to do a lot of therapy and work on themselves to be more empathetic. Like, I can't just make you more empathetic. Let's see. I want to make sure I got all these questions in my notes for putting into the YouTube description. So I would have to say, Julianne, I don't have anything I can recommend right now. It's a great question. If I think of anything, I'll make sure to promote it everywhere. But I really don't know. Andreas has a follow-up question. As the pandemic confronts us with some basic truths about life, it's not only toilet paper that's needed more. I assume security became a higher priority overall. Others assume the negation of any dangers from the "it's only a kind of flu" parts of society indicates a higher acceptance of risk. How would we test these alternatives? I might need a little bit more information here. Are you saying, how do we test that this is what people really believe versus what they say or post on social media? Is it how do we how do we know if security is a higher priority? I mean, security might be a higher priority for you and me, but companies continue to chip away at security and privacy every day. Now we have legitimate interest, which is the biggest pile of bullshit I've seen in a while. So I guess, Andreas, I would ask you if you can please give me a little bit more color as to when you say, how do we test these alternatives between what and what? I couldn't tell from your question. I apologize. Maybe it's just me. Yeah, Julianne, you got me thinking while I wait for Andreas to follow up. I remember when I was very little, my parents wanted to try to really foster critical thinking and problem solving for me. So a lot of the things I got were like math puzzles and riddles and science experiments and more puzzles. And I liked these things. They were a good match to me. And I'm sure they probably helped in some way, but I also have to imagine that I wouldn't have been as good at some of these things if I didn't have some natural talent. So again, I don't know. I think this is so hard, and it's almost human nature. Like I talk to a lot of people whose children are teenagers, and I hear what wacky things these teenagers do and think and believe. And I didn't do or think or believe any of that as a teenager because I was all about possible outcomes and permutations and combinations and deductive reasoning, and I was that wacky kid. So while I wait for Andreas, we've got a couple of more questions coming in. Let's answer Jesse's question. Hello, Jesse. Jesse says, I've been hearing the term delta come up as a buzzword in the industry more and more. It's highly used by building architects, referred to as a revision. What's your interpretation and use of the term delta as it's in your company name? So delta has its, at least the way all of us seem to be using it, has its origins in, of course, it's a Greek letter, but in maths and sciences, it usually represents change. It usually represents a change between one version and another version. So as you're saying in building architects, thinking about a revision. So sometimes people will say, what is the delta? Meaning, what did we change from here to here? And I decided to put it into my company name because I think of myself as a change agent, and I wanted to start an agency around change agents. We are definitely not order takers. We are definitely not in the box. So I really wanted to, kind of combine the ideas of the delta, the change, and the full arc of that customer experience. So I would say I don't think delta is as much as a buzzword. It can be a bit buzzwordy, but it also is a serious math and science term meaning change. So that might be why you feel like you're hearing it more and more. Chris says, thanks for the answer. I'm just starting in UX research. One of the most recent pieces of advice I got is I should focus more on my resume rather than my portfolio. What are your thoughts on that? Super question, Chris. Thank you for that, and good luck in your adventures. And Andrea says, how do we test these more extremes, general assumptions about what matters to society? Okay, I'll try to answer that when after I answer Chris. So hold on, let me write this down. Okay, Chris. So, Chris, ultimately, you need both. I think everyone should have a resume, and they should have mentors and coaches reviewing that resume. See, what was it, episode 59 on finding a mentor or coach? So you got to have both. So which do you focus on first? I can't get too wrapped up in that. Ultimately, you're going to have both. I apply to jobs all the time, and all of them ask me for a resume, and nearly all of them ask me for a portfolio. So you're not going to get away with, I only need one of these. You're going to need both of these, and they have to both be impressive. So, of course, the resume typically tells more of the story of your work history and your education, kind of like LinkedIn does. And then the portfolio is more about case studies and storytelling around the projects that you've done to try to be able to show, I know the right process, the right approach, I'm a good problem finder, good problem solver, whatever you're trying to show about yourself and your skills and approaches and techniques. So these are two different things. They don't really replace each other. And we were talking about this the other day with Dr. Nick and Darren, and I think some people might glance at the resume and weed some people out because they don't like something that's on it, or they were looking for something in particular and it's not there. And some people might start with the portfolio just to see how people are doing their work and what is the quality of the work. I don't know the quality of your work from your resume. Even if you show me you've worked at Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple, you could list every top tech company in the world, you might still be bad at this and somehow impostering your way across the universe. I've seen that before. So just because I see fancy names on a resume, I make no assumption about the quality of your work or your approach or your skills or your strengths. I want the portfolio to tell me that story. So Chris, you've got to work on both. If you go into the playlist that I have on the YouTube channel, so please head over to my YouTube channel, which is Delta CX, and go into playlists and look for the one that says Learning UX, something like that. And there's a bunch of videos in there that have advice on portfolios. So I would say watch those, even at 1.5x or 2x and blow through them. And I would say watch those and get some ideas on how to make better portfolios. And then I do resume and portfolio reviews as well. So track me down and get in touch when you're ready. So Andreas is trying to clarify, and Andreas says, how do we test these maybe more extremes as general assumptions about what matters to society or customers? And again, to me, I don't want to necessarily test an assumption because, again, by the time it's an assumption, someone might have a horse in the race. Someone might need to prove that they were right. And sometimes that means flawed surveys, manipulating data, crappy research. So I try to not make any assumptions about stuff. Again, I told you before, I usually don't go into research with hypotheses, guesses, or assumptions. I go into research saying, what can I learn? If it's generative research, what can I learn? If it's evaluative research, what can I learn? So I don't want to I know a lot of people say, start with a hypothesis. We believe users are doing blah, blah, blah. There's going to be someone, at least every place that I've worked has had someone who wanted to manipulate that study or manipulate its results to say, yep, we're doing fine. Yep, that thing we thought before was totally the right thing. We're on the right track. It's great. Nothing to see here. So I would say before we go and test any assumptions, why not just stop and write a research plan asking yourself, what do we want to learn? What do we want to learn? Why? And Jesse says, be the Delta. That's right. Be the Delta and be the low ego action hero. That's what we're all about here at Delta CX. Low ego action heroes. Getting it done with humility. So what matters to society or customers? I like to go into that research and say, I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm going to write questions that answer that. If I go in with assumptions, I find people who might match those. I write questions that might match those. And I've already possibly missed important information. So I don't want to go in and say, I think people are really worried about security right now. Let's write some questions and get people into a study and say, has the pandemic made you more worried about security? Flawed question. I don't even have a graphic. Okay, I have a graphic for that. Flawed question. Wave the red flag. Not good. Because again, that puts people in a bad spot. Either they're going to go, no, don't care about security. And then they have to face that you might go, what? Or they might think they have to say yes because it's one of those questions that just sounds like I should say yes to it. So again, I think the best thing we can do for society, for the pandemic, for all of this is research people and try to go in with as few assumptions, guesses, and hypotheses as possible. I like to say that hypothesis is Greek for I'm totally guessing right now. So try going into this stuff without that and see what you can learn when you haven't made any assumptions or guesses up front. There you go. Still no questions in the email, so let's flip back to the chat, and we've got Julianne. And let's copy and paste what she says into the future YouTube description. Thank you for taking my question and for the future follow-up on all channels. Yeah, I am here taking questions, and until there are more questions than I can handle, all questions will be answered. We've got 5 more minutes, so 5-minute warning, everybody. Ask your last questions, because then I got a call after this, and I can't run too late. Julianne says, what about when you're trying to work on personal or professional growth? How do you determine if you are a good problem solver, good problem finder, or lousy at it? Like most things, I believe that when you are on a personal or professional path, you need mentors and coaches. I've got a business coach who's also a bit of a personal coach. And if I had that question, I'd be going to her. And we've even done stuff like this in the past. We've said, like, am I missing something about me? Like, do I have a clear view of myself? Or how do I even know? But I think, like, if you came to me and said, hey, Debbie, am I a good problem solver or not? I would have to say, well, let's look at some of your work and see if it shows good problem solving or where it missed it. And you might go, oh yeah, that company didn't let me. Blah, blah. Okay, well, find me something, or I'm going to make you do a fake project that shows me how good you are at the problem finding and problem solving. But I think a mentor or coach, I don't think that's the kind of thing we can self-assess, because again, we all know people who are terrible singers and are sure they are great. And most people want to imagine they're great problem solvers. I know very few people who say, I'm a terrible problem solver. So best for a great problem solver to be your mentor or coach and work with you or take a look at things and go, here's where you need a little bit more help. Andrea says, makes perfect sense. Thank you. Low ego plans with clean language questions. I think so. I think that's always the way to go. Please, let's stop. I can't tell, all these canvases and other things are always like, and now write down your assumptions about the customer. And I feel like as soon as we do that, we've biased ourselves, we've biased others. Now someone's going to want that to be right or want that to come true because, hey, I wrote it down on that canvas. So please be careful of that stuff. Remember, 5-minute warning, everybody. I'm going to be heading out soon. So weird email came in, but not from you. So that's sad. I wish it were from all of you. Julianne says, thank you for that. Sure. So again, remember, I've got the Acture workshop coming up. I think we have 14 people signed up already, and I'm hoping for 200. So come and join in. It's going to be live, probably on Zoom, December 3 and 4. And you'll also get access to my video courses for the Core Skills program, and that's all in the same package. You pay for $60 for this. You're going to get the video courses and the live workshop, which is a big thing because normally I charge $900 for that, and the video courses alone are usually $150. So if you're interested in Acture, great deal to take advantage of. What else can I tell everybody? Let's take a look at some of the upcoming live streams, so you can please mark your calendars. I hope everybody will come tomorrow. Right, honey? You might be there. That's great. Because tomorrow is comedy office hours. Ask Debbie's boyfriend anything. Debbie's boyfriend is a nice man in his early mid 40s who is an up and coming UX junior. He has run his own business in other areas for many years, and then he's been a website guy for many years and is trying to get more into UX. So you can talk to him about his UX journey. You can talk to him about having to listen to me yap in front of this microphone hours every day. You get to ask my boy. I can't promise he'll answer the question, but you can ask my boyfriend anything. That will be a little bit blow off steam comedy for tomorrow. Who's in? Me. I'm going to be there. That's good. He says he will answer, but he can't promise the answers will make sense. And he's a funny dude because he wrote these jokes. He wrote the usability test, the subscribe button, and empathize with the like button. So there's no joke over here. So he wrote the jokes. He's good. Julianne says, any prerequisites for the Acture workshop? Believe it or not, Julianne, the only prerequisite is you must know what X and Y coordinates are. Because Acture does deal in elements that are at a certain X and Y coordinate on your page, and I am not teaching you 8th grade math to tell you what X and Y coordinates are. That is the only prerequisite. The course will take you from, oh my God, I've never looked at Acture before because it's so scary, all the way up to intermediate. So no prerequisites. Let's take a look at the real podcasts that are coming up and not just the comedy office hours tomorrow, which I hope you'll come to and burn off some steam over. Monday, November 2. Ooh, Dr. Seth Finkel will be back. We're going to be talking about earning respect. Do you need to earn respect? How do you earn respect? Ooh. Tuesday the 3rd, office hours, ask me anything. Though that is the day of the American election, and I will not be able to answer questions about the American election. Wednesday, November 4th, we've got a new guest coming on. Nick Morgan's going to come on and talk about job application pitfalls and dangers. Thursday, the 5th, I have a meeting. Monday, the 9th, I may or may not do something. I'm kind of waiting to see what the climate of the world looks like. I'm really worried the American election will be messy and people may or may not be in the mood for my wacky podcasts. Tuesday, the 10th, office hours, ask me anything. Wednesday and Thursday, I'm not doing anything because I'm speaking at conferences. I have like 3 conferences within 24 hours. Monday the 16th, we are just now planning a super secret, super cool podcast. Just mark Monday the 16th and trust me. That's all I can say. Tuesday the 17th, office hours, ask me anything. Wednesday the 18th, we are going to have the fantastic Lee from Akathame back on the show. And we are going to talk about job titles and levels. Because we've seen around LinkedIn lately, people asking, why does it matter what your title is? Why don't you negotiate for a high title? Why do I have to be a junior? Why can't I be a senior? And she comes from the world of HR and she's going to know. So mark your calendar for that. And that's about as far as I've planned because, again, I'm worried a little bit about the climate of the world as more people might be going into lockdown and the whole of America might be upside down. So last questions, throw them out now. Otherwise, I am going to head out of here. And remember, please do hit the like button in YouTube. It really helps me a lot. And please, if you enjoy these videos, please tell friends. I ask for so little. There's not anything I'm charging any of you for other than the Acture workshop, only $60. So please, spreading the word about the channel is great. I would love to get more subscribers. No, I don't plan to run ads on the channel. I've done the math on that, and I hear you make $3 for every 1,000 views. I don't need to make you watch ads so I can have $3. It just seems petty, but oh no, who knows? Maybe in the future. Or I'll work on the merch. Who wants to join the merch team? I need people who can help me make merch. We've got fun characters who should be on merch. And the 4 horsemen who should be on merch. And I'm a terrible artist. I didn't do this, my friend did. All right, I guess I'm going to wind it down, everybody, and get ready for my next call. I hope to see everybody here tomorrow for Comedy Office Hours. Ask Debbie's Boyfriend Anything. We'll be running, of course, the the questions and the anonymous questions. And I hope I didn't miss any of your questions. Every time I end this thing, somebody sends in a question. So if you send in a question after I end this, I will answer it next Tuesday. These are always archived. Check the playlist that says Office Hours Ask Me Anything, and you can always watch them at high speed. So on that note, everybody, be well, be safe, wear that mask. Stay away from humans, eat well, exercise, drink lots of water, and be a low ego action hero. I will see you here tomorrow for a comedy adventure. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.